Thank you. 2,852,901. Let that number sink in. That is the number of men and women since the Revolutionary War that have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. They are the casualties of our wars. That is nearly 3 million empty seats at the dinner table, 3 million sets of parents missing their kids, and nearly 3 million people missing their best friend. These people must never be forgotten, and I now ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. We as a culture often forget, nor can statistics truly measure, is the veterans that went home from war to raise a family, start a business, or just to live a normal life, only to be burdened by their injuries, their mental state, or the injuries from a war they fought in nearly decades ago. While these people may not, by the literal definition, be considered casualties of war, I often think of them as such. They have given up their second life, the life they would have lived were it not for war. To effectively communicate this idea to you, I must first tell you a story about one man whose high character has shaped me in countless ways I cannot even begin to fully realize. That man is my grandfather, who, unfortunately due to some recent health conditions, is unable to be here today. Gerard Burke was born an only child in New Philadelphia in 1944. He grew up there during the Second World War, where his father served. He accomplished something no one in his family had ever done before. He went to college. He graduated college, got a job, settled down, and began to start his family. He was living the American dream. Here's where his story begins to change. The year was 1967, and America was beginning to ramp up its involvement in the Vietnam War. My grandfather was just 23 years old, the perfect age to be drafted. He felt a strong sense of patriotism and duty, and, even with the baby on the way, decided to enlist. After going through basic training, he was deployed to the jungles of Vietnam, where he began the fight for our country and the advancement of democracy worldwide. 7 months into his deployment, he received a telegraph. The message notified him of the birth of his first daughter, who was born 3 days earlier. That baby was my mother. He still carries on this yearly tradition by sending a birthday card to my mom, just so it arrives 3 days late. A little over a year into his tour, in 1968, he received another message. This one, not so joyous. His wife was very ill. He was subsequently honorably discharged and returned home with his child and his wife as she recovered. He would never return to the fighting. While the war may have took a toll on his physical condition, him losing over 40 pounds in a little over a year, it seemed as if he was one of the lucky ones. He seemingly returned with no injuries to continue to raise his family and resume his American dream. He lived under this assumption for nearly 45 years. However, during what was supposed to be routine blood work in 2014, a few abnormalities arose in the results. It was found that he had myelofibrosis or blood cancer. Although it originally puzzled some of the nation's greatest physicians, one conclusion was finally reached. He had developed cancer from Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a tactical herbicide used during the Vietnam War to remove the dense foliage cover throughout the jungle. It is now evident to scientists that this substance is highly toxic, and even the littlest exposure can cause cancer in some people. He was not harmed by the enemy. He was harmed by the very country he was fighting for. He lost his second life. He, one day, will die from this. Despite the fact that it seems to others looking in like a negligent mistake on behalf of military leaders, my grandfather has absolutely never thought of this way and will not at all. He has never been bitter, resentful, or regretful of his time in the service. In fact, quite the opposite. He is proud of the time he spent fighting for our country and is one of the most patriotic people I know to date. This is just one of the examples of his extraordinary character. His story is one of many that might be the same or different. So, what do we as a society do for people who have lost or risked their lives or second lives for our great country? Is one day a year really enough? Is making a casual post on Facebook enough? When we hang a flag outside or hear the national anthem at the beginning of a sporting event, do we truly take a moment to think about what it means? I say we must always remember. We remember the people who willingly stood up and said, yes, I will risk my life for this great country. We remember those whose lives are forever changed as a result of war. And we remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for each and every one of us here today. A personal idol of mine, who is second only to my grandfather, President Ronald Reagan, once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free." I can confidently say that thanks to people like my grandfather, those here with us today, and the men and women around the globe who continue to risk their lives and their second lives for our great country, my children and my children's children will experience freedom. God bless our veterans, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.